And so I got a job as the administrative assistant, which was a fancy title for office boy, because I did everything as the office boy. I took parcels to the post office. I volunteered for everything. I never took no for an answer. I never expected it to work, and I never expected thanks. And those are 4 other points, guiding points in my life. Always volunteer. This is a good advice to people starting out as entrepreneurs or venture capitalists. I'm going to mention them again. Always volunteer. Don't take no for an answer. Don't expect it to work. Don't expect thanks.
That's gold, man. This is Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. We enthuse, we energize, we inspire, and we empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes in BW and beyond. Hello and welcome, dear viewer and listener, to yet another wonderful episode of Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. Always a thrill, always a privilege to bring you yet another game changer, yet another trailblazer, yet another successful entrepreneur to come and energize your spirit, to empower you, and as well as to inspire you. We are going to be covering everything entrepreneurship. We're going to be focusing on the radio business. We're going to be covering also all aspects of sales, especially because I've come to discover that my guest, Stan Katz, is indeed an expert, shall I say a guru when it comes to sales. I'm going to ask him lots of questions. Stay tuned. Please don't go away because you're going to enjoy this so thoroughly, and believe me. And in the meantime, I have my book, a little bit of housekeeping. My book is Nuggets of Grit. Please be sure to reach out. It's available at Exclusive Books. It's also available from my building, Mogobe Plaza on the first floor. You just go there and look for Josejo and get a copy. Now let's get right into it. Let me welcome this wonderful guest of mine, Stan Katz, a fellow speaker. A little bit of a backstory. I met him at the It's More Than Money seminar. This was on Saturday at Rosebank, and he gave a powerful speech and got a standing ovation. And that's how we met, and we took off from there. But now it's your turn, Mr. Stan Katz, to tell the viewers who you are. And by the way, welcome to the studio.
Thank you so much, Mom. It's a pleasure, and it's a privilege to be invited for to be in this at this august occasion.
Thank you so much.
I look forward to sharing with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Your nuggets of wisdom as well. Wherever I go, and I impart the little bit of wisdom that I have, I gather wisdom from the people I speak with.
Thank you. I'm honored to have you on the stage. If I were to wake you in the middle of the night and prick you with a needle and say, "Who is Stan Katz?" what would be your response?
Stan Katz is a man who is still searching for the meaning of life.
Okay.
The deeper part, the part that probably I spend a lot of time thinking about. And so my question would be, if you'd woke me up and said, "Who is Stan Katz?" my answer would be, "That's a good question."
It's a very clever response. But let's unpeel that a little bit. Let's unpack it. Education, growth, development. Take us through those.
Okay, education is a BCom in law from Wits University. Most of my life has been spent in and around advertising, sales, and media. I got into radio at the age of 23. I was actually driving my car one night, listening to a station called Swazi Radio. They had their transmitter in Swaziland because you couldn't get a license to broadcast in South Africa. But they had their studios and their offices in Johannesburg. And their, as I said, the transmitter in Swaziland. I was listening to the station. I was 23. I thought, you know what? I'd like to be a radio personality. Now, normally one has this. Normally one has a. Must I wait?
No, you mustn't. That's very rude of me. I apologize. Keep going.
So I had this epiphany that I wanted to be a radio personality, and my immediate inclination was to dismiss it on the grounds that there was no basis for it to succeed. I didn't think I had a great voice, not a particularly outgoing personality. But I'd read a book a couple of years before. You might have read it as well, called Think and Grow Rich.
I've read it. It's one of my Bibles on entrepreneurship.
It's my favorite book.
Wow.
It's the book that had the most impact on my life.
Wow.
I still use those affirmations from some of the world's most successful people. Twice a day, I say to myself, anything your mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. The other part of that is there's nothing capricious in nature. You wouldn't have the desire if you didn't also have the ability to make it happen.
Wow, that's powerful.
And every adversity carries with it
the promise of a greater or equivalent.
the seeds of a greater or equivalent benefit.
Wow.
Those are the three affirmations that have guided my life since the age of 22. So when I thought to myself, why would I want to be in radio? I don't have a chance of succeeding. And then I remembered anything my mind could conceive and believe, it could achieve.
Wow.
Napoleon Hill's words. And so I went for it. I managed to get an interview, a job interview at Swazi Radio at their studios in Johannesburg, and I announced to them that I wanted to be a radio personality. On those days, we called them disc jockeys. They said, we're not looking for a disc jockey. What do you know about programming? To which I replied, if you tell me what programming is, I'll tell you what I know about it. I didn't have a clue what programming was.
But you had the bravado, you had the confidence.
So I've always been a bit cocky. And the meeting was over, the interview was over. They thanked me for coming to see them. And I saw my life flash before my eyes. And I had to do something. I had to pull something out of the hat. So as I got to the door, I turned around and I said, I've got a BCom. And so I got a job as the administrative assistant, which was a fancy title for office boy, because I did everything as the office boy. I took parcels to the post office. I volunteered for everything. I never took no for an answer. I never expected it to work, and I never expected thanks. And those are four other points, guiding points in my life. Always volunteer. This is a good advice to people starting out as entrepreneurs or venture capitalists. I'm going to mention them again. Always volunteer. Don't take no for an answer. Don't expect it to work. Don't expect thanks.
That's gold, man. That's gold. I love that.
So, that has guided me through a lot of difficult times.
So from there, what was your next step up the ladder, so to speak?
Well, my next step up the ladder was when John Burks, who I don't know if you would know him, but he was a huge personality, radio personality in South Africa. He was brought on board as the program manager and presenter of the morning drive show, the breakfast show. So I asked for a transfer to programming. They granted me that. And Burks and I hit it off right from the start. He knew of my love of music. It was my love of music that got me into radio. That and theatre of the mind.
Which genre of music?
All genres. I just like music.
Okay.
I think it's the highest form of art.
Wow.
But, And he made me the music manager. And he gave me my first break on air. So life is like that. It's chance meetings, chance encounters, things that you could not have imagined. And one of the 10 points...
Serendipities and synchronicities. I read that somewhere.
Just say that again, because that is powerful.
Serendipities and synchronicities. I got that from Tracy, Brian
Tracy. Great man, brilliant man.
Yeah.
So, synchronicity means that there is nothing happens by chance in nature. It is all synchronicity. And as you said, serendipity. I'm going to remember that. Serendipity and synchronicity.
Absolutely.
Powerful stuff.
Look.
Anyway, so
Yeah.
I was then music manager because of my love of music, and Burks and I would spend Sunday afternoons putting the playlist together for the week. And then they hired a guy from Australia, a guy called Groover Wayne. They hired him as the music manager. Now, what's wrong with this picture? I was the music manager. They hire this guy, and I get demoted to assistant music manager. And here's a powerful lesson I learned. My first inclination was to teach them a lesson and resign. And then when my ego settled down, ego is not your amigo.
I like that.
Ego
is not your amigo.
Ego is not your amigo.
In other words, it's not your friend.
It's not your friend. So I thought, you know what? If I stay put, I will learn from this guy. I will not only know everything I knew about radio, I would learn everything that he knew about radio. And so I settled down and learned an enormous amount because I didn't let my ego get in the way. Anyway, he had such a bad personality. He was the kind of guy who would brighten up a whole room when he walked out. But so he and Burks clashed, and he was fired, Groover Wayne, and I was back in my job.
Wow, but you had learned so much from him.
I'd learned so much from him. Wow. It was serendipity and synchronicity.
Exactly, those
both
two.
of those wrapped up in one.
Wow. Listen, I want to take you back to where you mentioned the book Think and Grow Rich.
Yes.
I want to raise something that might be considered controversial. There's a chapter there called sexual transmutation.
Yes.
A lot of people have scratched their heads to figure out what that chapter is saying.
Yes.
And what the message is there for the entrepreneur. What did you pick from that chapter, and how did you interpret the idea of sexual transmutation?
Sexual transmutation is sex is an energy. If you don't use up the energy, and because we all get caught, we all get sidelined, we all get sidetracked, you can transmute that energy into growth.
In other words, redirect.
Redirect, that's what transmutation is. You're redirecting energy.
Because the tendency would be to go, to respond to those natural instincts.
Correct.
But now instead of responding to them,
Yes.
you transmute them.
Yes.
And direct. How, did you do that in your life? And if so, how?
Not enough.
We can read into that one whatever we want.
But yeah, I would say not enough, but I did.
Yeah.
I think everything works together in tandem. So the transmutation of sexual energy is very powerful.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
If you've read How to Win Friends and Influence People,
By Dale Carnegie, I've read it.
Dale Carnegie, I read that when I was 13.
Wow.
He also talks about the power of sexual energy, that people do things for two reasons: sex and the need to feel important.
Yeah. Of course, Sigmund Freud said that also.
He did
Sex
indeed.
is very, very primal.
Primal, absolutely.
Now, in terms of your next move after you had reached that level in radio, did you ever attain ownership? And
Yes.
if so, how did you go about that?
Okay, but there are a couple of steps before that.
Yes.
I need to explain how I got fired.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So after Burks was, Burks couldn't get on with the station manager, so Burks left, and I landed up as the program manager. Now, a year or two before then, I didn't even know what programming was, and here I was promoted to the position of program manager because people fell out of the way, disappeared, and I stepped into their shoes.
They moved on to other radio stations, or they found other jobs.
Or they found other jobs, or they just couldn't take it
Yes.
anymore, because the station manager knew nothing about radio. What he didn't know about radio would have filled a warehouse. And I couldn't take it either, because I was...
Where did they get him from? From the street?
He was a Springbok water polo player and very well known. So they thought, here's a guy who's well known. He can open doors and bring
But
in
he
the
turned
numbers.
out to be totally clueless.
Clueless.
I like how you said his ignorance could fill a warehouse.
Yeah.
I like that one.
So I wrote a report on why he was so ill-equipped for the job, and indicated in, well, almost so many words, why I would be a better bet. And I gave the report to the owners of the station. I was very proud of that report. My expectation was that
Just out of your own gut, as it were. I
Yeah.
mean, it wasn't like called for or anything like that.
No,
It
no.
was- Yeah,
I was 25.
Wow.
So what do you know at the age of 25? And to my surprise and dismay, they gave him the report.
Whew.
So he called me into his office. And he
Fuming,
said,
I'm sure.
huh?
Fuming.
Fuming. You cannot imagine. He said, I believe you're not happy with the way I'm running the station. I said, that's right, Bull. And I plan to resign. I had to say that because I could see the axe coming. So I said, when? I said, at the end of the month. He said, well, I don't think we need to waste any time. You can leave now. And just like that, I was out.
Wow, wow, wow.
I was out.
Okay.
I'm going to try and exclude, I'm going to try and edit so that we can get to the grist, the nub of your question.
Yes.
And your question was about ownership. There were many steps along the way before ownership. So I then took time to lick my wounds, and I put on a rock concert at Ellis Park, and I landed up managing a rock band. And then that didn't pan out, so I got a job in advertising, and I was working in advertising. I'd met a guy at a convention in Toronto, Canada, in 1977, sorry.
77, yes.
77. Now, he was one of the top program managers in America, radio program managers. You see how programming was surrounded my life all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And
You had gone there to upskill yourself. Even
Yes.
those days, you recognized the importance of attending.
I attended many
Conferences.
conferences. My company sent me to many conferences, and where they didn't send me, I would pay for myself to go.
Wow.
I do believe in conventions and conferences and seminars and webinars and podcasts like the
this
ones that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank
Anyway, so I went to America. I got a job working with him in Hollywood. And then I had to, after 2 years...
In Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. After 2 years, because there's Hollywood, Florida as well.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course. I
this
have to
was-
make it clear.
Yeah, this was Los Angeles. I had to... I had issues with my immigration, and my immigration lawyer suggested I be out of the country when my status changes. And so I came back to South Africa, and 702 was just getting started. And I got a job. The guy who had fired me from Swazi Radio was now running 702. Shows you some guys, as useless as they are, fail forward.
They have ways of using the system for their benefit.
Absolutely.
That means he was improving as well.
No.
Oh, okay.
He was improving at getting better jobs, but he wasn't improving in his knowledge of radio.
Oh, okay.
And anyway, he wasn't keen to hire me, but because of my experience and my experience in America, I got a job during 10 o'clock to midnight on a Sunday night. Not exactly prime time, but I did well, and I landed up with my own show in the afternoon. In 1985, so this was 1980 when I came back, 1985, they appointed, because of my experience in the business end of radio, they appointed me sales and marketing director. By 1987...
But when you talk mid-80s, that's what is time when When the political situation was
Terrible.
very volatile.
Volatile. It was the worst days and the dark days of
I
apartheid.
remember, yeah.
And I'll tell you the role that we played in bringing it down,
Wow.
or giving the country its first taste of democracy back in the 80s.
Wow. I'm looking forward to that conversation. But let's get on with this one.
Okay, by 1987, I was the managing director of 702. So from 1980 to 1987, I'd worked my way up to the very top. 702 was making so much money. We were pumping money.
Through advertising?
Through advertising, only advertising. We then bought a big station from the SABC, and we listed the company. We listed Prime Media.
On the Johannesburg Stock
On the
Exchange?
Johannesburg Stock Exchange.
It's difficult to imagine for radio.
For
Was it
radio,
that
we were
big?
just a radio organization at the time. We then expanded into other platforms. But I became the chief executive of Prime Media Broadcasting. We had 4 radio stations at that stage.
Namely?
Highveld, 947, today it's 947.
Yeah.
Highveld Stereo, 702, Cape Talk, and then afterwards we bought KFM in the
Okay.
Cape. So we had 2 stations in the Cape, 2 in
So
the
the
in Gauteng.
listed company was the parent company of all
Correct.
this. Yeah.
Correct. I was one of the founders.
Yes.
And by 1997, I was not having fun.
This is 10 years later.
10 years later,
But let's just go back a little bit. How did you fund that growth, that listing? I'm sure a lot of money was needed.
a lot of money was needed. First of all, 702 was a cash cow. It was pumping money,
Yes.
and we had highly rated paper. So our shares were worth a lot of money. And so we used the cash flows from 702 with our highly rated shares to buy other media platforms. We bought an outdoor company, we bought magazines, we even bought Stir Kinnickle, which was a movie company, which was a big mistake because movies is not media. Movies is retail. Movie companies, exhibitors, make their money from popcorn and Coke.
Basically.
It was a bad decision. Nearly
Bankrupted the whole company.
nearly bankrupted the whole company.
You had to eventually sell.
because we overpaid for it as well.
Yeah. Did you eventually have to sell that part?
That only happened recently. They
Oh.
couldn't get rid of it for years. And the guy who was responsible for buying it eventually was ousted. Anyway, so
So was it bleeding you all these years?
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, thanks. I was already, so my role didn't change.
Yeah.
I stayed as chief executive of Prime Media Broadcasting.
Okay.
Um,
So did you own the bulk of the company, or how does it work? I've heard people say that for you to grow fast enough, you need to hold a minority stake.
Look, you can
dilute.
you can control with 35% ownership. You can control a company, and so we had more than 35%. The company at the time was worth 8 billion rand.
That's huge for
It was
those
huge.
days. Even.
In those days, it was huge.
Mm.
Anyway, by 97, I'd had enough. And as things would happen,
What turned you off?
I wasn't having fun. The reason I got into the business in the first place was my love of radio. But here I was writing reports and speaking to analysts. It's not very exciting. To some people, it's exciting. If
To bean counters, to
to
accountants.
bean counters,
Yeah, maybe.
EBITDA to a bean counter, there's nothing sexier than EBITDA.
yeah, but to you, no.
Not to me, no.
Because you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
You want to discover new frontiers.
100%.
Yeah.
Anyway, so one night I was at a Stir Kinnickle function, as it would happen. We were launching a new movie and bumped into a guy. Guy comes up to me. His name was Arthur Machiachidi. He comes up to me, he says, "You Stan Katz?" I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "I'm Arthur Machiachidi. And we start talking, and he says, he's in media. I said, what is your line of work? He said, media and telecommunications. So I said, what is your media asset? What media assets do you have? They had a 25% stake in a station called Kaya FM.
Still around, that one.
Still around.
Yeah,
It's been through several changes, ownership changes, management changes, but it's doing quite well now. And he said, there are minorities in the station who want to exit. They were not happy with the situation. There were 14 shareholders. Shareholders meetings, board meetings, were battles. It was
war.
It was war. Everybody wanted to get their own way.
Yeah.
So I said, just there and then, I said, I'll buy out the minorities. He said, great, and we started talking. I then got an investment bank to back me. I had a good reputation. So on the basis of my reputation, they agreed to back me in buying
those minorities out.
the minorities out.
I hope you didn't overpay this time.
No, we didn't overpay. Now, the company was technically insolvent. And within 3 months, we were still waiting for the transfer of the shares to the new owners to take place. This had to get the approval of the regulator, which at the time was the IBA. Now, because the company was such a mess and technically insolvent, we assumed that it would be a formality because we were saving this company. This was in the early days of privatization of SABC stations, etc. This was
late 90s, you said.
Late 90s. This was a greenfields license. So 3 months later, so the remaining shareholders asked me if I would go in and run the place in the meantime, because by the time we got permission, there'd be nothing left to own. So I put together a team from Prime Media. They weren't having fun either. The bean counters had taken over, and my radio fanatics were not having fun. I said, come join me at Kaya. We'll have a wonderful opportunity. We'll have a good time. And we did. Within 3 months, we trebled the turnover off a small base, and we doubled the audience.
What was the trick?
We just applied basic, proven sales techniques, programming techniques. We knew I had so much experience from America.
Some people, that sounds like you pulled the rabbit out of a hat. I mean, that's really dramatic to go from.
It was dramatic.
Yeah, I mean, to some people, how does that happen?
Well, we just applied proven techniques and made it happen. And I had a highly experienced team.
Yeah,
that's the key as well. You don't hire smart people and tell them what to do. You hire smart people so they can tell you what to do. I had a bit of both. I could tell them what to do. I also brought the guy who'd hired me in America. I hired him as a consultant.
You brought him all the way?
I brought him all the way.
Ooh, must have cost you a fortune. But it was worth it.
It was worth it. He was a fanatic his hobby was trains. So he said, okay, he wants to come via Europe and he wants to visit some trains and train setups and everything in Europe and South Africa. He was aware of the train situation in South Africa. So I didn't have to pay him. All we paid him for is his accommodation and his travel, and the rest he did for me. He was also my mentor.
Wow.
He became my mentor. And I brought him in to organize the music on the station.
Wow.
And that was the reason we doubled our audience, because of his input and the music.
What was the big change there in the music?
Well, they were playing everything on the face of the earth: jazz, R&B, soul. I said, get rid of the jazz, because you can have a jazz show on a Sunday afternoon, but it's not mass market.
Mm.
So we changed the programming to a mass market format,
Mm-hmm.
and that was soul and rhythm and blues, and we played only the hits.
And were you traffic? Were you targeting the traffic audience? I mean
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Your drive times are obviously the best times because you have a captive market.
Mm.
People are in their cars,
Yeah.
and so that is the prime time for radio.
Yeah. Now I'm going to now pivot a little bit and ask you things that when we're prepping for the show, I would call them Katzisms. These are ideas.
Katzisms.
Yes, I call them
People used to
Katzisms.
call them Stanisms.
Yeah, I'll call them Stanisms, or let's just call them Stan Katzisms.
Okay.
I will mention a thought, and then you develop it as it applies to your life. For instance, one of the things you believe in is that obstacles are removed when impossibility yields to necessity.
Yes.
Now, unpack that with examples and with illustrations.
Okay. Now, when impossibility yields to necessity is the mother of invention.
Mm.
Some people say necessity is a mother,
Yes.
but necessity, and where I come from, mother is half a word.
Yeah. All right, you'll get it. I won't interpret it for you.
I have not said anything.
Yeah, it's half a word. Yeah.
That's all. Anyway, so yeah, necessity is the mother of invention.
Mm.
When you are faced with an impossibility, unless you become very creative, you will go under.
Mm.
And that's what I meant by that.
Mm-hmm.
When impossibility yields to necessity, you become very creative.
And are you able to illustrate that?
Yeah. And this actually touches on one of the questions you asked earlier about the dark days of apartheid.
Mm.
Now, 702 was a music station, and we were up against an SABC station called Radio 5.
Mm-hmm.
We were both playing music. Had basically the same format, and we were both on AM, which is very different to FM, especially for music. AM has range, but it doesn't have the quality. Mm-hmm. When the SABC closed down Springbok Radio, they had an FM network which they handed to Radio 5, which became 5 FM, and we realized that we could not compete with them on a music format because of the quality of FM.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so here we were faced with a very difficult and impossible situation. A dilemma indeed.
Mm.
So we said, what do we do in the face of this? We realized we had to become competitive within the entire arena, not just against one radio station, but the entire arena. Mm-hmm. We looked at what wasn't being done, where the gap was, and what they were doing. I remember at our strat sessions, there were 3 of us involved. We would sit together night after night with bottles of J&B whiskey and brainstorm.
That's what used to happen at those strat sessions. Should have been fun as well.
It was fun.
Yeah.
You know, I have another saying in my life. If it ain't fun, it ain't happening. There's got to be an element of fun to everything that you do. Otherwise,
it ain't happening.
It ain't happening.
Yeah, I agree.
So we said the SABC can't tell the truth because they were the propaganda mouthpiece of the apartheid government. Their narrative
because that
was
the time around the Rubicon 1, Rubicon 2, something
exactly.
like that, which turned out to be poof.
This is around 1988.
Yeah.
1988.
That could have been Rubicon 2, yeah.
Yeah. I remember the day listening to that on the radio. My God.
Yeah, it was a disaster.
It was a disaster. It was a disaster for the country. Anyway, so we said, how do we compete with this? Just one step back.
Yes.
We could not get a license to broadcast in South Africa because the SABC, which was owned by the government, had a monopoly on
television.
television and radio.
Mm-hmm.
And radio.
Oh.
We managed to get a license in Bophuthatswana. So we took something that was a brainchild of the National Party, the Nationalist Party, the apartheid government, and turned it against them. We put our transmitter in Bophuthatswana. We had our studios in Johannesburg, and we had studios in Bophuthatswana.
Time of Radio Bop.
Bop was around the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yours was
We
called?
ran Bop for them for a while, and we ran their transmitter for them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Wow.
So, where am I? We said the SABC can't tell the truth. All we got to do is tell the truth. We said, how do we do this? We changed our format from music to talk.
Mm-hmm.
First talk station in the country. I had been observing what was happening overseas, particularly America. I learned an enormous amount from the Americans. When it comes to media, there's no one better than the Americans.
No, there isn't. So talk as in allowing people to call in?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we could do things that the SABC couldn't do. The SABC couldn't say, it's an open line, what's on your mind? We went in, we said, it's an open line, what's on your mind? Now, for the first time in hundreds of years, we had blacks and whites across the spectrum talking to each other. They had their first taste of democracy.
Wow. Through radio.
Through one radio station. We were only in Gauteng, but Gauteng was the biggest market in the country anyway.
Still is.
So what we did was, what we achieved was we were exposing black aspirations and white fears.
Oof. That's powerful.
Now, this was at a time when blacks and whites were not even allowed to cohabitate, weren't even allowed to commingle.
Yeah, the Act Against Marriages was still in place.
The Immorality Act.
Immorality Act was still in
Never
place.
mind marriage. You couldn't...
You couldn't even hold hands or anything.
Or anything. You couldn't... It was against the law to commingle.
Yeah, to even share water in a beach or whatever.
Absolutely. It was whites only.
Just terrible.
Whites only here, whites only there.
So what was the
only.
impact of allowing people to talk and to share the space of radio?
First of all, our audience took off.
Mm-hmm.
Now, prior to that, our target market had been 16 to 34. So another thing was happening concomitantly, what's the word I'm looking for, at the same time.
Concomitantly is good enough.
It's okay.
But maybe you need to define it at the same time.
At the same time, what was happening was the baby boomer phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
People born between 1946 and 1964. They were now 25 to 49. We changed our target market from 16 to 34 to 25 to 49.
You simply moved with them as they matured.
That was exactly what our strategy was they have grown up, we've grown up with them.
Yes.
They were now the decision makers, the role players, the people who were calling the shots.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they'd grown up with us from when they were in their in their teens. They were now adults, and they were running the show.
They are now in important positions, yes.
Yeah. So we changed the target audience, the age, the target demographic. And that played a big role as well. And we ran ads. We took over every outdoor hoarding, every billboard that we could lay our hands on to advertise what we were doing. We had signs saying, prevent truth decay.
Play on truth decay.
Prevent truth decay.
Yeah.
The other thing we had was for adults over 5. And then we had our newsman. We had a big picture of our newsman with a slogan that said, he reads between the lies.
Yeah. That's good.
And so what worked in our favor financially was the advertising industry. People in the advertising industry were listening to the station. They were fans of the station. So they were quite happy to put their money
in
on
there.
and you'll find in media, a phenomenon in media is people tend to advertise on the platforms that they use or they listen to.
Because somehow they believe they're circulating the money through their ecosystem.
Exactly.
Yes. And did you attract the attention of the authorities?
Absolutely.
What happened there?
We kept getting called into meetings. There was nothing they could do. If they could have, they would have shut us down. But look at the dilemma they were in. Number one, Bophuthatswana was a creation of the apartheid system.
Yeah. It's supposed to be an independent
An
state.
independent state. If they would have closed down Bophuthatswana radio or closed down
Radio
702
Bop, yeah.
or 702, they would be seen to be interfering in the affairs of a sovereign, independent country. Recognized only by the South African government, no one else in the world.
Yeah.
But to close us down would be seen to make a mockery of their whole apartheid strategy.
They'd be like shooting themselves on the foot.
Absolutely. And so they said, you've got to limit the public service that you're doing, community service, because that was a very big part of our strategy, was to become the hub of the 702 land community.
Yeah.
In other words, the Gauteng community. We wanted to be the hub. We came to the rescue when there was a food shortage, when there was any crisis.
Why were they asking you to limit that? Surely you're helping the people.
Well,
Surely
because it was
they saw it as a political activity.
Exactly. It was generating huge loyalty for us.
Yeah.
When we did research and people said, why do you like South Africa? Why do you like 702? They would unprompted say, because 702 cares.
Yeah.
So we showed we cared. They couldn't do this.
Yeah.
How can you say you care, but you're excluding the majority of the people?
Makes no sense. Let's go to another stanism. Living is the hardest thing you'll ever have to do in life.
Yes.
Yes. Break that down.
Well, life is hard. Life is hard. I mean,
isn't it what you make it?
Life is what you make it, but it's how you deal with the hardships. But if you recognize that it's hard and that you need to deal with it, that's what I mean by it's the hardest thing you'll ever have to do.
Yeah, but there's a tongue-in-cheek meaning there.
It's kind of humorous.
Yes.
It's humorous. It's saying life is damn hard, now handle it.
So in other words, don't be a crybaby.
Don't be a crybaby.
Expect it to be tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you go in expecting something to be tough, to be hard, you're prepared for it.
You're better equipped.
You're better equipped.
And of course, you have another one, which is treat yourself like someone you are responsible for taking care of.
Yes.
Yes.
Look after yourself.
This one I want you to back up with an example.
Look after yourself. If you don't look after yourself, who is going to look after you? And by looking after yourself, you look after others as well. Because you can't look after yourself without automatically
looking after others. Because you can only be useful to them when you are taken care of.
When you're taken care of.
Yeah.
So yes.
There's an example that pops into your head where you had to apply this stanism.
Treat yourself like someone you're responsible. Okay. I, at a fairly young age, developed depression. And at the time that I'd gotten depressed, I was clinically depressed. It was a
But
biochemical
not suicidal,
imbalance. I was suicidal as well.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And
it's hard to believe now.
I had to work through this.
Yeah.
But it was by taking care of myself. First of all, it wasn't something that you readily admitted to, because you'd be seen to be weak or...
yeah, it starts with a P, the word. Yeah, you can't say it. You'll be seen as a P.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I went to... I enrolled in psychotherapy. I took medication. I took care of myself.
What was triggering it?
A biochemical imbalance. To this day, they don't know what triggers it. But millions and millions and millions of people in the world suffer from depression. Not only depression. And so I had to take care of myself by taking advantage of all that was available to me to help me deal with my issues.
Yeah. But it didn't require medication?
Yes, I was on medication.
Okay.
And today I'm a big believer in, if you are depressed, take steps.
Yeah, do something about it.
Do something about it. It's no longer what is the word I'm looking for?
A luxury or optional.
Optional. And it's no longer something to be ashamed of.
Yes.
It's no longer.
There's no stigma anymore.
That's the word I'm looking for. There is no stigma. In the early days, back in the 80s and that, there was a stigma attached to admitting that you're depressed. Today, every second person you meet is on medication.
And the word stress is thrown around so carelessly.
Exactly.
I'm under stress. I feel stressed.
Yeah, because you're having a bad day.
Yeah.
I'm stressed. You don't know what stress is.
They don't know. Yeah. All right. Here's another one. You ready for it?
Yep.
Another Stenism says, "Don't put energy into what should have been. Focus on what is, and be grateful."
Yeah, I'm a big believer of gratitude. It's a truism and a Stanism of life that you get more of what you're grateful for. If your focus is on what you don't have, and this goes back to Napoleon Hill and people like that, Brian Tracy, who, what was the question? Being
grateful.
It doesn't help putting energy into what could have been or what should have been.
Yeah.
It didn't be. And this brings into play the word pivoting. If you are pursuing a particular strategy or a course of action and it doesn't work, you pivot to another course of action without changing your
overall objective.
Your overall objective, your goals.
Yeah.
So
you just change tactics.
You change tactics.
Strategies, like you said earlier. Those
strategy and tactics.
Yeah.
And that is...
you change strategy and tactics without changing the goal.
Without changing the goal.
That's brilliant.
And that's what I was getting at in that particular one.
Which triggers a thought in my head of, now Stan is a speaker. How did he become a speaker? How did you gravitate towards speaking?
By doing sales training. I was, and also because when I was the head of 702 and the head of Prime Media Broadcasting, I was called upon to make speeches at functions and events and things like that. And public speaking is one of the most stressful things you can do.
They say that people prefer death to public speaking. They've done all kinds of research that fear of death is actually public speaking is ahead of the fear of death. Absolutely. It's unbelievable.
I discovered I quite enjoyed it. It's scary because you don't know how you're going to come across. And I used to use a lot of humor. Now with humor, humor is tricky.
Can be deadly sometimes.
It can be deadly.
Depends on the audience.
You know, I did a lot of humor. My show on radio was centered around humor. Now, if you look at the terminology when it comes to humor, if you make them laugh, you slay them. Right? I slayed them, man. I killed it.
Yeah.
And if they don't laugh, you die.
Yeah.
You die. You have that trickle of sweat that goes down the back of your neck called flop sweat.
Yeah.
You die.
Yeah.
But I discovered I enjoy talking.
Yes. And sharing. Why specifically sales? Why did sales become the centerpiece of yours?
Okay.
Talks? Yeah.
two things. Number one was I started on the programming side, as I explained, and I told you how I landed up on the programming side. But the more I started going to conventions, I started seeing there was another aspect to radio that I found quite intriguing, quite attractive, and that was the business end of things. My aha moment was when I realized that radio is in the business of delivering prospects to advertisers. And in order to deliver prospects to advertisers, you can't sell anything to anyone that they don't want to buy. You had to find out what was in their minds. If you wanted to influence people, you would have to find out what is in their mind. And the way to find out what is in their minds is you do a consultant survey. You do a needs analysis. And prescription without diagnosis is malpractice.
I like that. Yes, that's true.
It's one of my favorite sayings.
Prescription without diagnosis is malpractice.
Exactly. So
That's
if
a
I'm
piece
going
of
to try
gold.
and sell
Add
you something,
yeah.
and I'm going to offer you a solution to a problem that we have identified, or a challenge or an opportunity, if I haven't discussed this with you and got an inkling, an understanding of what it is that you're up against, how can I prescribe something?
Yeah. Another way of putting it is you cannot scratch if it doesn't itch.
Exactly. You've got to find the itch.
Yeah, you've got to find the itch first before you scratch.
Yeah.
Okay, another Stenism, and we'll talk about your speaking as you develop this as well. Be kind. People are fighting a battle we know nothing about. Besides, you never know who the instrument of your enlightenment might be, or you of others. I like that one, but I believe you're about to make it even sweeter by explaining it.
Well, people don't show when they're depressed or sad or unhappy. They are good at hiding it. And we don't know what somebody is grappling with in their own life that they're not letting on. And if you're generally just kind to people, you can't go wrong. And I'll give you an example of in my own life. I shop at a Woolworths around the corner from me. And one of the cashiers said to me one day, "My colleagues like serving you." So I said, "Oh, that's very nice." She said, "Why?" She said, "Because you look strict, but you're very nice." And only because I'm polite, I was polite to them. Because I thought, what a difficult job these people are doing. They're out there trying to earn a living, trying to support their family. That's something that is admirable. And so I'm polite to people. Sometimes things get you down, and your first reaction is to react. I don't anymore. I think, maybe this person's having a lousy day. Stephen Covey, in his book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, tells a story about being on a train traveling, and there's some kids playing and making a noise and laughing.
With their dad, yeah.
With their dad.
I remember that story, yeah.
And some loved one had died, and he was just trying to cope with it. And he was letting the kids just let off steam. And I remember that very clearly. We don't know
and
what
someone
somebody else is dealing
responded by
with.
saying, "Why don't you take control of the kids?"
Exactly.
And the response was, "Oh, I didn't realize. Oh, I guess it's because of the death, losing their mother. We're just from the hospital." And it changed the whole perspective of the person who was previously angry at the person.
You know, when I encounter someone and they're just being rude, I say, "Are you having a bad day?"
Yes. And normally they calm down.
Yeah,
they tell you, "Now that you ask, this is what I'm having."
Another thing that I ask people is, "Do you need a hug?"
Do you get lots of hugs, Stan? In this day and age, I'm sure you get plenty of them.
They say you need about 10 hugs a day just to survive.
I like that. When it comes to having faith, another Stanism, in the words of Martin Luther King Jr., You don't see the whole staircase, just the first step.
Yeah, you don't have to see the whole staircase.
You don't have to see the whole thing.
Faith is knowing that it will unfold as you proceed,
Yes.
as long as you see that first step.
Mm.
I love that saying.
Yes, because
I love that saying.
what does it say, and how did you apply it in your life? What does it say to you?
Well, when I go all the way back to my start in radio, where I thought to myself, there's no way this could work. And then I had the faith that anything my mind could conceive and believe, it could achieve. And I had faith that it would work as long as I took the first step.
Yeah. I told the viewers that I'm going to ask you about money.
Yes.
I'm not going to ask you if you're a billionaire, but you behave as you fit the profile.
Oh.
In the sense that you're accomplished, you're relaxed, and you have emotional intelligence. And if you were to advise one entrepreneur how to go about it to become super successful, not necessarily become a billionaire, what would be the basic ingredients, and how does that
I can give you an example from my own life.
Yes.
So I'm 23, 24. I'm working as the office boy at Swazi Radio, and I get offered a job by someone running a tie factory. Nothing could be more removed from radio to a tie factory. I was earning 250 Rand a month.
It was a lot then?
No.
It was still
It was peanuts.
Yeah.
But you know what? I loved what I was doing so much that at the end of every month when I got paid, I would think to myself, and they're paying me.
Yeah.
I would have done this for nothing.
Yes.
And so I had a mentor. I've been fortunate to have mentors in my life. I believe in that. My mentor was my uncle. So I get offered this job at double the salary, 500, which...
This is in the 70s.
This is in the 70s.
Yeah.
If you look at relative to what I was earning, it was a lot more money. And he asked me one question.
It was 100% increase.
It was a 100% increase. He asked me, do you like what you're doing? I said, I love what I'm doing. And he said, then continue doing it. If it's a labor of love, you'll go the extra mile. If you chase the money will elude you. But if you're doing what you love, the money will come. And that has been my philosophy in life. I've been fortunate that I've been able to do the stuff that I love to do. And then, of course, the money enables you to do more of it or different things. But money is important, but it should not be your God. People say money is the root of all evil. That's not the saying.
They're misreading it.
They're
the love of money.
The love of money is the root of all evil.
That means the worship of money.
Yes.
Yes, that kind of, yeah.
I like Witness Ndaka's book. It's more than just money.
A lovely book. What does he say there about money?
Well, that sums it up.
Yeah. That's the essence of it.
Yeah.
According to Winston Churchill, when you are finish that off, what's the
When
saying?
you're going through hell, keep going.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to get stuck in hell.
Yes.
You just got to keep going.
Okay. So then.
And that speaks to perseverance.
So
it speaks to perseverance and resilience.
So going back, I'm sure there were times when, you didn't know whether you were going to make payroll, when things were really rough and a lot of people were not paying and it looked like you may have to close.
Yes.
But you persevered.
I persevered.
What was that? What was the spirit? What kept you going? And what difference did it make, that perseverance?
It's one of my other points. The absence of alternatives clears the mind marvelously. One month, we didn't get the Kaya license. They refused to transfer it to the new owners. I had these people that I'd brought on board who were now looking up to me and saying, now what? You sold us the dream. I said, don't worry, we'll do something in the industry where we won't have to own the assets. And I set up a thing called a company called United Stations, where we would sell on behalf of licensed radio stations. 1 month I couldn't pay salaries. I cashed in my pension from Prime Media days.
Wow.
Cashed in my pension just to pay salaries 1 month.
Wow.
So
if you had a different mindset, you would have had to close.
yeah. I believed in what we were doing. I knew we would trade our way out of the difficulty.
I hope this means that when the profits started coming, you paid back your pension.
I didn't actually, but I'd made a lot of money from my shares in the company.
It didn't matter.
Didn't matter.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that I'd ever be able to do that, but that wasn't, my only thought was these people deserve to be paid.
So why do you think, based on that, 90% of businesses collapse and fail?
In the first couple of years.
three to 5 years.
3 to 5 years. I don't know. That's a very good question. Why do you think?
Well, that's a good question too. I think it had to do with not getting the fundamentals right.
Yeah.
And it has to do with the absence of mentors.
Yes.
And the tendency to chase another shiny object.
I think companies fail for two main reasons. One, they're underfunded and badly strategized. Underfunded and, yeah.
So how do we improve this huge failure rate?
I think it goes with the territory.
Because it's been like that across the world. For America,
Yeah.
the same problem.
Yeah. 80 to 90% fail in the first 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
I think
It's a horrible statistic.
it's a horrible statistic, but if you study failure, I try and study success.
I like that. You focus on the good stuff.
Yeah,
Excellence is not a skill. It's an attitude.
yeah.
Yes.
There are some people who don't let good get in the way of great. That's another way of saying it.
Practicalize that for us.
What was the question again?
Excellence is not a skill.
Yeah.
It's an attitude.
It's an attitude. It's an attitude that drives skill. If you're not happy with the results you're getting, or you know you could do better, and I keep coming back to that, don't let good get in the way of great. If your attitude is we can do better, you're not letting...
that sounds like a quotation from a book by a guy called Collins, Good to Great.
Good to great.
Yeah.
I love that book.
It's a wonderful book.
I think companies around the world ran roundtable meetings with their staff discussing the book and how we can apply it. It was one of the greatest books I've ever read on business.
Wow.
And then he did another one. I forget what the other one was called. But great book.
Yeah, Collins is really
I see you're a reader.
Yes, I love reading.
Yeah.
I just
What are you currently reading?
I'm reading a book called I read The Obstacle is the Way. That's one of my favorite. But I'm reading sometimes I go back to these books. My favorite now that I often go back to is The Blue Ocean Strategy.
Oh, that's
That's a powerful book.
what is that?
Blue Ocean Strategy. Basically, the basic notion is that let's not compete on a red ocean where there's blood in the water, where everybody's doing the same thing. Let's create a blue ocean where there's less competition. That's the thrust of the book.
That's brilliant.
I even call my meetings with my staff, I call them Blue Ocean Strategy
Fantastic.
meetings as a result.
I'm going to use that.
Yes, it's powerful. Let's go further. Finally, remember, tough times don't last, but tough people do. The wish for each and every... Okay, no, that's fine. You're a tough person. You outlasted tough circumstances. What was the key? Was it a religious inclination? Was it faith?
I have faith. I'm not religious. I believe in God. I have faith. I pray. I meditate.
Yes.
I do transcendental meditation.
You're not Christian or not Jewish?
I'm Jewish by birth.
Yes.
But I don't ascribe to any...
You're not a Zionist?
I'm not a Zionist.
Okay,
No.
I understand. Okay, let's just expand on that a little bit, because the power of your faith is sometimes, from what I get, is inextricably tied to your ability to overcome obstacles. So, what would you say was the toughest challenge you encountered, and how did you get over it?
My toughest challenge was dealing with depression.
Mm-hmm. Which you
And
spoke about already.
yeah. I did everything and I prayed like mad.
And you overcame it.
I overcame it.
What about in business?
In business, it was when we were faced with an insurmountable, I call it an insurmountable opportunity, but which was when we had to decide on, do we change course? Was when 702 from a music station to a talk station. It had never been done in this country before. We had a ready-made audience for music. We had to find a way around that, because it ran the risk of failing. That was a very tough time. Those 6 months, I had ashen-faced staff members in my office every day saying, can't we just play some music? Advertisers were saying, what the hell are you doing? What are you doing?
That was during the transition.
During the transition. And I knew I had to bite the bullet. I had to bite the bullet and see it through. And thank God we did, because...
and 6 months later, the same staff are now saying, you're a genius.
We're a genius. Isn't that true?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
I'm
a
sure that's what
genius.
happened, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Now-
what do they say? Common sense is genius in its working clothes.
In its overalls, yeah.
In its overalls.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Now, let's flip it now. What would you say is one of your greatest triumphs or successes? Or maybe there are a few of them that you're most proud of, in business especially.
Oh, in business. I was going to say the thing I'm most proud of is my son. He turned 33 just the other day.
Wow.
He is a compliance and data officer. And don't ask me what that is. He's explained it to me several times.
Yeah.
He's now doing a thing on cyber security.
And it's
But-
bringing him the dough, of course.
He says he could make more money. Money's never been his driving force. But he's just a fine human being. He is just so emotionally immature and all those good things.
Yes.
So, yeah, that is
So
my...
he listened to his dad.
Yeah. He tells me I'm the greatest man he knows, which is, I don't know that it's true, but,
From this podcast alone, I think it's more than true.
well, we try. You never stop
So
trying.
that is one triumph.
Yeah.
What else?
702, Prime Media.
Because it looks like you created a legacy there.
Yes, I guess I did.
Yes.
I guess I did.
But what about it? What about if you were to sing its praises? What is the differentiator? What is the thing you're most
Well, the strategy with Prime Media was, or the impetus was, we have to own Joburg. And how do we own Joburg? Is we own the two biggest stations in Gauteng, in Joburg. I also believe very much in start with the end in mind. And so it was creating something from virtually nothing that I think was quite an achievement. Everything starts with a thought.
All right.
Everything starts with a thought.
does.
I'm quoting Napoleon Hill again.
Yeah, he's absolutely right.
I'm going to go and read that book again. I've read it a few times.
Yeah. Every time you read it, you discover
You just some new stuff. Yeah.
Let's project into the future. I'm talking decades now.
Decades.
10 years, 20 years, 30 years. What do you see? What does your crystal ball tell you?
I can't think that far. For myself, 10, 20, 30 years, I probably won't be here. 10 years, be lying on a beach somewhere. But I enjoy working. It's not a labor. It's a labor of love. I love what I'm doing. Are you asking me to predict what state the world is going to be in?
I'm looking at the brand Stan Katz.
Oh.
And I'm looking at 702, what you've created. What can we expect a decade or two from now about these two powerful brands?
Stan Katz, and which was the other one?
702.
702. Well, 702 is still doing very well. The company I formed, United Stations, was 2000. It's now 25 years later, still going strong. There have been failures. I don't dwell on the failures.
Yeah, I wasn't going to ask you because I know you don't have regrets.
No. I've had regrets, but I don't dwell on them for too long. It'll bring you down.
Yes.
Don't focus on what should have been. Focus on what is, and be grateful.
Absolutely.
So life is precarious. You don't know where the next opportunity is going to come from or the next threat. You know, we could sit here and we could do a SWOT analysis.
But real life can tell us something different.
Totally.
Yeah.
You know, you want to make God laugh, make plans.
I like that one. Yeah. So you.
Or who says, life is what happens while you're busy making other plans.
That's true. I've heard that. So you don't want to waste any energy projecting that far into the future.
No, I can project a year into the future, but maybe 5 years.
All right. Great stuff. I think we've covered a lot of ground. Here's a chance for you to hit me with a question.
Okay, here's a question. If you had a choice between predicting the future or changing something in the past, predict the future or change something in the past, which one would you go for?
Neither.
And why?
Neither. You know why? I firmly believe that there's no point in dwelling in the past because it's happened, what's done is done. And in terms of working on the future or tinkering the future, I think that it would be fairly boring if everything was predictable, if everything was determinable. That does not mean I don't plan for the future. That does not mean I don't save and invest for the future. But knowing it in a predictable sense of knowing every step of the way, I don't think I would enjoy life that much if I knew everything that's around the corner. So I'm sorry to disappoint you, Stan. I wouldn't like either of those.
Can I tell you something?
Yes.
I gave the same answer as you when I was asked this question.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
it's the same as saying, if you knew then what you know now, would you have made the same decision?
Yeah.
You can't answer that.
No, it's
You were,
unanswerable.
you had different information. Circumstances were different. The situation was different. The economy was different.
Absolutely.
You can't answer.
No, you can't.
There is no.
Yeah.
So I'm asked
I'm
him.
glad I answered the same way you did. Maybe you and I think alike.
I think more alike than you would imagine.
Yes, indeed.
I've enjoyed this in interviewing you as much as you
Yeah.
interviewing me.
Have a look at that camera there and speak to that viewer there. It might be somebody facing tough circumstances. It might be someone who's wondering what to draw out of this interview. Leave them with some uplifting, positive messages as we wrap up our conversation.
First of all, I would suggest, and I'm going to read it, you get hold of this book, that you listen to this podcast, because I have learned an enormous amount from this. My advice is know where you're going and know where you are now. Where do you want to be? How do you plan to get there? And when do you plan to arrive? And then deal with all the ins and outs and the ups and downs that life's going to throw you along the way. Have faith, be strong, keep going.
Absolutely, that's beautiful. Would you share all your contacts, especially as a speaker?
Yes.
For those who don't know, Stan is available to speak. He's not that expensive, but of course he's not that cheap either. But that's for you to find out. Can you share all your contacts?
Sure. My email address is Stan B for Bravo, Katz, Katz, @gmail.com. My phone number is 2783-303-9597. 2783, sorry, it's plus 2783-303-9597.
Social media?
Social media, I've got a podcast. I forgot to mention my own podcast. You can get it on Spotify. It's called Herding Katz, Katz. It's lessons on leadership I learned from the edge. From everything that I've been through in life, I have derived a bunch of, I think there are about 12 of these podcasts, 12 episodes available now. Learn from a life in radio and a life of tough times and good times, but you don't have to be in radio to benefit from the advice that I give. So it's called Herding Cats. It's where you get your favorite podcasts.
Okay. Thank you, Stan Katz. It remains for me, dear viewer, dear listener, to thank Stan Katz for taking the time out of his extremely busy schedule, for him devoting so much time to us in terms of this podcast and sharing his nuggets of wisdom, which are of considerable weight. I mean, you might as well given us bars and bars of gold, guys, if you think about what he shared. I suggest that you go back and listen to this podcast again. In the meantime, please strike that subscribe button. We need that button to be struck more than you can imagine, because that's how we stay relevant. That's why we're able to attract people of the quality of Stan Katz and the like to come onto the podcast. That having been said, thank you so much for watching. May God continue to bountifully bless you. Bye-bye.